So I want to take this opportunity to explain the session, the seminar, the tutorial, the lecture, to explain in more detail how the systems are going to accumulate, how the systems are going to operate, allowing you, the spectator, the viewer, the interpreter, the responder, the recipient, allowing you to exchange willfully, exchange dynamically, exchange via alternate positions, via new positions, exchange that is meaningful, but also that allows you to measure not only the success of that exchange, but also the progress within the context of that exchange. So looking at recipient A and recipient B and pushing that exchange, pushing it, enlarging it, so that the exchange becomes meaningful, not just for, let's say I'm Unit C, not just for Unit C, but also for Unit A and Unit B. Those are the, Unit A and Unit B are the two primary recipients of this exchange. So just to demonstrate, I have a whiteboard, and on the whiteboard, hopefully, what we're going to start to see are examples of this exchange and how the exchange is not only cataclysmically driven, but also how the exchange benefits. So if I position this accordingly, so that every participant, stakeholder and entrepreneur can see, that's really where we are. So let's establish a point. Let's move that point. Let's say this is Unit C, which represents the tutor, the teacher, the lecturer, the session, the seminar, the conference. Okay, so that's that position, and from that position we're going to be deviating through a series of curves, taking us to, bear with me, taking us to the moment that that exchange is compromised, here through A and through B. Now it's that compromise through that synchronicity that will hopefully evoke and provoke that stimulus to change. I just want to identify those points as tracks within that stimulus to change that will hopefully push, progress and transform the community upon which the exchange is taking place, but also a broader, wider spectrum of exchanges, a broader, wider spectrum of democratic, utilitarian, progress-based, progress-driven exchanges. That's really where we are. It's that progress-driven exchange, PDE, or the exceptional notion of antiquity, which also the antiquity section leads to stakeholder A and will help to transform and push PDE into a new direction, into a challenging space, space of communal and convivial attitudes that are often mistaken for attitudes that don't promote equality or democracy, but actually are taking the next level, are taking stakeholders C, L, S and S to that new section, where that section is considered, there's a kind of public outcry, and the public outcry is really here and doesn't particularly push that section very far. what I want to consider is also, what I want to consider at this stage is positioning the whiteboard a little closer so that your engagement becomes a little bit more focused on not necessarily the linear structure or the linear narrative, but instead focusing and considering oppositions that were previously not particularly considered, oppositions that were previously not really born from these two sections. And that consideration, that production, that dynamic is really where we are. It's essentially, if I give you an analogy to support learning, an analogy to increase confidence, an analogy that will hopefully stimulate yet again the molecules and the molecular processing that will push learning from a non-transformative space to a transformative space that is a space of becoming. So, I once went over to the backs, and the backs were dry, the backs were dry, and on the backs I took my DSLR. No, it wasn't DSLR, it was an SLR, because this situation took place in the 90s, in the late 90s. The situation involved taking photographs of a match, but more specifically fire, and the fire raged, and I made a split decision. I had to make a choice, and I stepped away, walked away from the fire. Walking, upon reaching my house, my parent was home, my mother was home. Look, son, look, son, look, son, look, son, there's a fire on the backs. Mother, is there? Yes, son, yes, son. So I followed my mother upstairs. No, my mother was already upstairs, and I went upstairs, had a look outside. My goodness, mother. My goodness, mother. There was a fire. There was a tractor putting out the fire. Gosh, I said to my mother, gosh. The fire was managed, controlled. Nobody was hurt. However, from that point onwards, I decided to manage risk far more strategically and with far more scrutiny. So the lesson is very simple. Focus on managing risk, but managing progress that associates and accompanies that risk, because you want to achieve your creative goals. Primarily, it's about achieving your creative goals, but also your strategic and business and geographical and philosophical and economical goals as well. And it's that process that I'm interested in. The analogy of the fire, the camera, the person documenting fire, stepping away without a shot, it allows you to see how in a context of tension, in a context of anxiety, in a context of decision making, split decision making, split decision making, it's that process that I want to consider, and it's that experience that has led to this seminar, Seminar A, allowing us to consider, allowing us to the encounter in more detail, essentially. So, let's just reposition. Let's just peer assess. Let's just reevaluate, reassess and reconsider the positionings and the locality of where we are. And why we're in that position in the first place. What I want to show you now, final element of the learning encounter. This final element of the learning encounter will hopefully take you into the next strategic zone, but also into the next process of learning. You need to make a note of every single title, every single question, and these notes will push and push and push until, to a certain extent, accompaniment, but in a certain extent, it's enlightening, but it's not enlightenment. It's engaging, but it's not full engagement. It's a process of challenging yourself, challenging what becomes you, and challenging what has become you, and taking it to the point where this becomes significant. That was session A, seminar 1, lecture, and hopefully, what you can take from this, moving to the second seminar, to the second session, to the second lecture, what you can take from this is simply, you can become knowledge, learning, encounters. You can become the facet, the locality and the publicity that accompanies self-promotion will back you up. Will back you up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening.